The silk sheets whispered against Liora's skin as she shifted, careful not to wake the man beside her. Dawn crept through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, painting Seoul's skyline in shades of amber and rose. She'd never watched a city wake up from this high before. 53 floors above the world, where the air tasted different and consequences felt distant. But they weren't distant. Not anymore. Liora turned her head on the pillow, studying the face she'd been forbidden to see like this. Yoon Tae-Rin, the man they called Chairman Yoon in whispers, the ghost king of Seoul's financial underworld, slept with his defenses finally down. His dark hair fell across his forehead, softening the sharp angles of his face. In sleep, he looked younger than 32. Almost peaceful. The kind of peace she'd stopped believing he could feel. Her chest tightened with a dangerous warmth. How did I get here? The question echoed through her mind as she traced the path from terrified assistant to the woman lying in his bed, wrapped in sheets that probably cost more than her entire month's salary. 6 weeks ago, she couldn't meet his eyes without her hands shaking. Now she knew the taste of his kiss, the sound of his breath against her neck, the way he whispered her name like a prayer he'd forgotten how to say. His hand moved in sleep, reaching across the space between them. When his fingers found hers, something cracked open in her heart. She remembered the first time he'd touched her, not last night's desperate, breathtaking collision of souls, but 3 weeks ago in the rain. He'd tucked her hair behind her ear with fingers that trembled almost imperceptibly, and she'd seen the fear in his eyes. The fear of a man who'd convinced himself he was incapable of feeling anything at all. Maybe you're winning, he'd whispered then, his voice raw with something that sounded like hope and terror mixed together. She'd won. God help her. She'd won a bet she should never have accepted. 29 days. That's how long it had taken to crack open the fortress around his heart. And tomorrow, she glanced at the clock glowing soft blue on the nightstand. Tomorrow marked day 30, the end of their agreement. The moment she'd have to collect her prize and walk away, or stay and face the truth, neither of them had been brave enough to speak aloud. Liora's throat burned. She interlaced her fingers with his, feeling the steady pulse of his heartbeat through his wrist. A heart that beat, that felt, that had learned to hope again, because she'd been foolish enough to believe she could teach a ghost to be human. Tomorrow, I would have to tell him the truth, that I had fallen in love with a man who claimed he couldn't feel anything at all. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd come to Seoul running from grief, numb with loss, and found herself in the arms of another broken soul. Two people who'd forgotten how to feel, teaching each other to hurt again, to hope again, to love again. Before I tell you how we ended up here, she thought, as if speaking to someone beyond this moment, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about love and loss, and taught me that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is make a man feel again. Tae-Rin stirred beside her, his grip on her hand tightening. Even in sleep, he held on. She closed her eyes and held on too, wondering if love was always this terrifying, this beautiful, this doomed. 6 weeks earlier, the elevator doors opened onto the 65th floor of Yoon Holdings, with a soft chime that sounded like a death knell. Liora gripped the handle of her worn leather bag, her mother's, one of the few things she'd brought from home, and stepped into a world of cold marble and colder stairs. She was 26 and desperate, which was the only reason she'd applied for a position that had a turnover rate faster than Seoul's seasons. Personal assistant to Chairman Yoon. The job posting had been clinically brief. Exceptional organizational skills required. Discretion mandatory. Weak constitutions need not apply. The last line should have warned her. 3 months in Seoul, and Liora still felt like a ghost haunting her own life. The accident had taken her parents on a winter road, black ice and bad timing, and left her with a younger brother to raise and debts that swallowed her dreams whole. She'd sold everything, moved Ethan to their aunts in Busan, and come to Seoul chasing job postings that promised enough money to rebuild. She'd survived losing everything once. She could survive anything now, or so she'd told herself while practicing her interview answers in a language that still felt clumsy on her tongue. The receptionist, a woman with ice-sharp cheekbones and a gaze that could cut glass, looked up. You're the new one? Liora Chen, I have an appointment. He's waiting. The woman's expression flickered with something that might have been pity. Good luck. You'll need it. Chairman Yoon's office sprawled across the eastern corner, all dark wood and darker windows tinted against the harsh morning sun. Papers covered every surface in what looked like organized chaos. 3 computer monitors glowed with financial data, and behind the massive desk backlit by the Seoul skyline sat the man himself. Yoon Tae-Rin didn't look up when she entered. Liora had seen his photo in the business section. Everyone had. Youngest chairman of a major holdings company, mysterious background, rumored connections to everything from construction contracts to political campaigns. But photographs hadn't captured the gravitational pull of his presence, the way the air seemed to thin around him. He was beautiful in the way sharp things are beautiful, all clean lines and controlled danger. Black hair styled back, features that could have been carved from marble, and eyes that finally lifted to meet hers with the warmth of a winter sea. Miss Chen. His voice was quiet, precise. You're 3 minutes early. I believe in respecting other people's time, Mr. Yoon. Something flickered across his face, too quick to name. Your resume says you have no experience as an executive assistant. That's correct. Then why are you here? Liora met his gaze, refusing to look away even as her pulse hammered. Because I'm excellent at finding order in chaos. I learn quickly, and I'm not easily intimidated. Everyone says that in interviews. Most people are lying. She gestured to his desk. Your filing system is alphabetical, but your priority system is color-coded. That's why nothing flows. You're using 2 organizational languages that don't translate. Give me 2 hours, and I'll have a system that speaks both. Tae-Rin leaned back, studying her with eyes that seemed to calculate her worth down to the decimal. You're not afraid of me. It wasn't a question, but Liora answered anyway. Should I be? Most people are. Most people haven't lost everything they loved in a single night, she said quietly. After that, very little seems frightening. The silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. Then Tae-Rin stood, and Liora realized he was taller than she'd expected, presence filling the room like a storm gathering. 2 hours, he said. Impress me. She did. By lunch, his desk was organized by both priority and category. By evening, she'd restructured his calendar to maximize efficiency and minimize redundant meetings. By the time he dismissed her at 8 p.m., his expression had shifted from cold assessment to something that might have been curiosity. You're hired, Miss Chen. Don't make me regret it. Liora bowed slightly. I don't plan to, Chairman Yoon. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her at the door. Miss Chen, you said you lost everything. Is that why you recognize it? She looked back, finding his gaze fixed on her with unexpected intensity. Recognize what? What it looks like when someone is pretending to be alive. The words hung in the air between them, too honest, too raw. Liora felt something shift in her chest, recognition calling to recognition. Yes, she whispered. I suppose I do. Outside, as the elevator carried her back down to earth, she pressed a hand to her racing heart. She'd just been hired by a man the entire company feared, a man they called the ghost chairman because nothing seemed to touch him, move him, make him feel. But she'd seen something in his eyes in that final moment, not emptiness, loneliness, the kind that comes from surviving when you'd rather not. Her phone buzzed, a text from Haewon, her only friend in this massive, indifferent city. How did the interview go? I got the job. The response came immediately. Which company? Yoon Holdings. Personal assistant to the chairman. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, Liora. Do you know who he is? What do people say about him? I know he needs someone who can organize his chaos. He's dangerous. Promise me you'll be careful. Liora looked up at the building towering above her. Somewhere up there, a man sat alone in an office overlooking a city that feared him. I promise, she typed, even though she wasn't sure it was a promise she could keep, because something in Yoon Tae-Rin's eyes had called to something in hers. 2 people who'd learned to survive by not feeling, suddenly recognizing each other across the careful distance they'd both built. And recognition, Liora was beginning to realize, was the most dangerous thing of all. 3 weeks into working for Yoon Tae-Rin, Liora understood why people quit. Not because he was cruel. He wasn't. Not because he was demanding. She could handle that. But because working beside someone who'd mastered the art of not existing was slowly making her question her own existence. The dinner invitation came on a Friday evening, delivered in his characteristic monotone. Join me. We need to discuss your performance review. His private dining room occupied a corner of the penthouse, all floor-to-ceiling windows and a table that could seat 12, but tonight held settings for 2. The city glittered below like a jewelry box spilled across velvet. Leora's hands trembled slightly as she took her seat. Tae-Rin poured wine with mechanical precision. You've exceeded expectations. Thank you, sir. Stop calling me sir when we're alone. He set down the bottle, studying her with those storm gray eyes. You're different from the others. Different how? You're not afraid of me. Liora took a sip of wine, buying time. The truth was complicated. She was terrified of him, just not in the way he meant. She feared the way her heart stumbled when he walked into a room, the way she'd started staying late, hoping he'd ask her to stay later, the way his rare smiles had become something she craved like oxygen. I'm not afraid, she said carefully, because I see someone pretending not to hurt. The wine glass paused halfway to his lips. For the first time since she'd met him, Yoon Tae-Rin looked genuinely surprised. Excuse me? You've built this entire persona, the ghost chairman, the man without feelings. But I've watched you, Tae-Rin. The use of his name felt intimate, dangerous. You feel everything. You've just convinced yourself that not acknowledging it is the same as not feeling it. He set down the glass with careful control. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? I've seen you pause at the window when it rains, like you're remembering something. I've watched you delete messages before sending them because whatever you wrote revealed too much. You think you're empty, but you're just terrified of being full. Stop. His voice cut like a blade, but Liora couldn't stop, not now that the dam had broken. Why? Because it's easier to be a ghost? Because feeling nothing hurts less than feeling everything? Tae-Rin stood abruptly, walking to the windows. The city lights cast his profile in sharp relief, beautiful and unreachable. When he spoke, his voice was so quiet she almost missed it. 5 years ago, I felt everything. Every joy, every pain, every hope. He pressed a hand against the glass. And then someone I trusted, someone I loved, used all of that against me. She knew exactly which strings to pull because I'd given her the map to my heart. 3 good men died because I was too busy feeling to see the truth. Leora's chest tightened, so you decided never to feel it again. I didn't decide. It just stopped, like a switch flipped off. He turned, and the emptiness in his eyes was devastating. I haven't felt anger in 5 years. Not joy. Not pain. Not even when I learned she'd survived and disappeared while men who trusted me bled out. I'm a ghost in my own life, Miss Chen, and ghosts don't feel anything. She stood, closing the distance between them before fear could stop her. That's not true. You don't. I see you feel things. You just won't let yourself admit it. Liora reached out, her fingers hovering near his hand. You're not empty, Tae-Rin. You're just scared. And I understand that because I've been there too. Something flickered in his expression. Vulnerability. Quickly shuddered. Then his jaw tightened and she watched him retreat behind his walls in real time. You're very certain of your assessment. His voice went cold, clinical. Let's test it. What do you mean? A bet. Tae-Rin stepped closer and Leora's breath caught. 30 days. Make me feel something real, not a ghost of emotion, not a shadow. Something undeniable. If you succeed, I'll give you anything you want. Money, references, freedom from this job. Name it, and it's yours. And if I fail, his eyes held hers with unsettling intensity. Then you stay with me. The words hung between them, layered with meanings Leora couldn't quite parse. Stay with him as his assistant, or stay with him in some other capacity that made her pulse race and her rational mind scream warnings. Why would you make this bet? She whispered. Because I need to know if you're right. For a moment his mask slipped, and she saw the desperate hope beneath. I need to know if I'm capable of feeling anything ever again, or if I'm exactly what everyone believes, a monster wearing a man's face. Leora's hands trembled. This was insane, dangerous, a bet that could only end in heartbreak. But looking into his eyes, seeing the raw vulnerability he was trying so hard to hide, she couldn't walk away. 30 days, she said softly. I accept. Just like that? Just like that. Something passed between them, an understanding, a promise, a declaration of war on the carefully constructed walls they'd both built. Tae-Rin's hand lifted, fingers brushing her cheek so lightly she might have imagined it. You're either very brave or very foolish, Liora Chen. Maybe both. The almost smile that touched his lips made her heart stutter. Starting tomorrow. Day one. She nodded, not trusting her voice. They stood too close, the air between them electric with possibility and danger. Then Tae-Rin stepped back, the professional mask sliding into place. Min-jun will drive you home. Liora gathered her things with shaking hands. At the door, she paused. Tae-Rin, thank you for trusting me with the truth. Don't thank me yet, he said quietly. You might regret this. In the elevator, Liora pressed a hand to her racing heart. What had she just agreed to? 30 days to make a man feel again. 30 days to crack open a heart that had been locked away for 5 years. 30 days to either save him or destroy them both. Min-jun waited by the car, his expression unreadable. As they pulled into traffic, he spoke for the first time. Miss Chen? A word of advice. Yes? His eyes met hers in the rearview mirror, dark and serious. The last person who got close to him didn't survive it. Not because he hurt her, because she broke his heart first. Are you prepared for what happens if you succeed or if you fail? Liora looked out at the city rushing past, lights blurring into streams of gold. No, she admitted, but I'm going to try anyway. Because somewhere in that penthouse, a man who'd forgotten how to feel was hoping, desperately, dangerously, that she could teach him to be human again. And Liora had already made the fatal mistake of wanting to try. Day 3 of the bet, and Tae-Rin asked her to stay after the office emptied. Walk with me, he said, shrugging into his coat. Not a question, but not quite a command either, something in between that made Liora's pulse quicken. Seoul's night streets became their ritual. They'd walk for hours through neighborhoods that shifted from glass and steel to intimate alleyways lined with food stalls and paper lanterns. Tae-Rin never said where they were going, and Liora learned not to ask. The wandering was the point. On the 5th night, as they paused on a bridge over the Han River, he spoke into the darkness. Tell me about your family. Liora leaned against the railing, watching lights reflect on black water. My parents met in a bookstore. Dad was Korean American, Mom was studying abroad. They built a life around books and bad coffee and dreams that seemed impossible until they weren't. Her voice caught. And then a patch of black ice on a winter road, and all of it just ended. How old were you? 23. My brother Ethan was 15. She felt tears threaten and blinked them back. I became his guardian, sold everything to pay the debts, and tried to pretend I knew how to keep a family together when mine had shattered. Tae-Rin's hand found hers on the railing, his fingers cool against her skin. He didn't say anything, just held on, and somehow that was enough. What about you? She asked. You said you were engaged. His grip tightened almost imperceptibly. Ji-hee, we were together for 3 years. She was brilliant, beautiful, everything I thought I wanted. His voice went flat. She was also the informant who sold our operation to the Kang family. 3 of my men walked into an ambush because I was too blinded by love to see the truth. I'm sorry. Don't be. I learned an important lesson about trust, which is never give anyone that power again. Liora turned to face him, studying the harsh lines of his profile. That's not living. That's just surviving. Sometimes surviving is enough. Is it? She squeezed his hand. Because from where I'm standing, you look like a man who's forgotten the difference. Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or recognition. Before he could respond, rain started falling, sudden and cold. They ran for cover, but by the time they reached the nearest awning, they were both soaked. Tae-Rin looked at her, really looked, and for the first time he laughed. The sound was rusty, unpracticed, but real. You're completely drenched. So are you. Liora pushed wet hair from her face. Very dignified for a chairman. I haven't been dignified since you walked into my office. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered, and the air between them shifted, charged. Maybe you're winning. They stood too close, breathing the same rain-washed air. Leora's heart hammered against her ribs as his gaze dropped to her lips. She saw the want in his eyes, the fear, the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, he could feel this. Then he pulled away, jaw tight. We should get you home. The tension followed them everywhere after that, across conference tables during meetings where their eyes would catch and hold, in the elevator where his hand on her lower back became natural, necessary, in the moments of silence that stretched like pulled taffy, sweet and dangerous. On day 15, a rival businessman cornered Liora at a corporate event. Park Jin-woo, all expensive cologne and a predatory smile. "So you're the one who's tamed the ghost chairman. I'm his assistant. Is that what they're calling it?" He leaned closer, wine-warm breath against her ear. "When he gets bored, give me a call." A hand, large, possessive, unmistakable, settled on Leora's waist. "Mr. Park." Tae-rin's voice could have frozen fire. "I believe you're needed elsewhere." Jinwoo's smile faltered. "Of course, Chairman Yoon. My apologies." When they were alone, Liora looked up at Tae-rin. His jaw was clenched, eyes dark with something that looked suspiciously like jealousy. "I thought you couldn't feel anything." His silence was the answer. But the threats started that night. A note slipped under her apartment door. "Leave while you can." Anonymous messages on her phone. Whispers in the office. "She's making him weak. She'll ruin everything. She won't last." Haewon gripped her hands across the cafe table. "Liora, this is serious. These people don't play games." "Neither do I. You're falling for him." Liora couldn't deny it. "Maybe. He's dangerous. So is crossing the street. So is loving anyone." She met her friend's worried gaze. "I have to see this through." Day 21. Another rainstorm, because Seoul in spring was nothing but rain and blooming things. They shared an umbrella, pressed close by necessity and choice. Tae-rin's arm around her shoulders felt right in a way that terrified her. "I keep waiting for you to run," he murmured. "From what?" "From me. From this. From whatever's happening between us that neither of us knows how to name." Liora stopped walking, forcing him to stop too. Rain drummed against the umbrella like a heartbeat. "I'm not running. Why not? Everyone else does." "Because I see you, Tae-rin. Not the ghost chairman. Not the man everyone fears. You. The person underneath all the armor who's terrified of being human again." His free hand came up, cupping her face with devastating gentleness. "You're winning," he whispered, thumb brushing her cheekbone. "And I don't know if that terrifies me or saves me." They stood frozen, rain-soaked and trembling with want. Leora's lips parted, invitation and surrender. She watched Tae-rin's eyes darken, watched him lean closer, felt his breath ghost across her mouth. And then he pulled away, stepping back so abruptly she stumbled. "We should go." His voice was wrecked. "Before I do something we can't take back." The walk back was silent, electric with everything unsaid. At her building, Tae-rin caught her wrist. 9 more days." "I know." "What happens when the 30 days end, Liora?" She looked up at him, this beautiful broken man who was learning to feel again one excruciating moment at a time. "I don't know, but I'm not afraid to find out." He released her slowly, reluctantly. She watched him walk away, umbrella dark against darker rain, and pressed a hand to her thundering heart. 9 more days to make him feel. 9 more days before everything changed. 9 more days of this exquisite torture of wanting someone who was finally, dangerously learning to want her back. Liora climbed the stairs to her apartment, found another note. "Last warning," and threw it away without reading it fully. Because some warnings come too late. Some lines once crossed can never be uncrossed, and some hearts once opened can never fully close again. She was falling in love with Yoon Tae-Rin, and from the way he'd looked at her in the rain, desperate, hungry, terrified, he was falling too. The question wasn't whether they'd crash, it was whether they'd survive the landing. Day 25, and Liora couldn't sleep. She'd been staying late at the penthouse more often now, working through files in Tae-Rin's study while he took calls in the next room. Tonight, he'd stepped out for a meeting, leaving her alone among his carefully curated emptiness. That's when she found the photograph. It had slipped behind a bookshelf, probably forgotten years ago. The woman in the picture was beautiful. Sharp cheekbones, elegant neck, eyes that seemed to hold secrets. And those eyes. God, those eyes were the same shape as Liora's, the same smile, the same way of tilting her head. Leora's hands shook as she pulled out her phone, comparing her reflection to the photograph. Not identical, but close enough, similar enough that anyone looking would see the resemblance. Her name was Ji-hee. Liora spun. Tae-Rin stood in the doorway, his face carefully blank except for his eyes, those eyes that had finally learned to show emotion again, now burning with something that looked like guilt. "Is this why you hired me?" Her voice cracked. "Because I look like her?" "Liora, answer me." She held up the photograph. "Was I just some sick replacement? A do-over for your broken heart?" Tae-Rin crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping just short of touching her. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what to think, because right now I'm thinking this entire bet was bullshit, that you saw someone who reminded you of your lost love and decided to play out some twisted second chance fantasy. She wasn't my lost love." His voice turned razor sharp. "She was my greatest mistake." Leora's breath caught. Tae-Rin took the photograph from her trembling fingers, staring at it with an expression that could have carved stone. "Ji-hee worked in my organization. Started as an analyst, brilliant with numbers and patterns. We were together for 3 years. I loved her, or thought I did. I trusted her with everything." His jaw clenched. "She was the informant feeding information to the Kang family for 2 of those years." The room tilted. "What?" "She knew our routes, our schedules, our safe houses. She looked at me with love every morning and betrayed me every night." Tae-Rin's voice went hollow. 3 of my men walked into an ambush on a night I sent them instead of going myself. Park Sung-min, aged 28, had a daughter. Kim Do-yeon, aged 35, was getting married that summer. Lee Jin-ho, aged 26, was... "Stop." Liora touched his arm, feeling him tremble. "Please stop. They died because I was too stupid to see what was right in front of me, because I felt too much." He finally looked at her, and the devastation in his eyes made her chest ache. After, Ji-hee disappeared. No explanation, no apology, just gone. And I decided never to feel anything again, because feeling is what got good men killed. Leora's anger drained away, replaced by something more complex: grief for his loss, rage at the woman who'd broken him, and a terrible understanding. "So when you saw me, I saw someone with her eyes but not her coldness, her smile but not her calculation." Tae-Rin cupped her face, thumbs brushing her cheeks. "I hired you because you made me curious. You walked into my office and saw through me in 5 minutes. You organized my chaos and called me on my bullshit and weren't afraid. But the resemblance, it was a coincidence." He paused, vulnerable. "Maybe fate's way of testing me. Could I look at someone who reminded me of the worst mistake of my life and choose to trust again? Could I feel again without it destroying me?" "And can you?" she whispered. "That's what terrifies me." His forehead touched hers, breath mingling. "Because I kept you because you made me hope, Liora. You made me want to try. And now I'm terrified because I do feel everything. And it hurts worse than feeling nothing. It hurts so much I can barely breathe." Leora's hands fisted in his shirt. "Good. That means you're alive." "I don't know if I remember how to be alive." "Then let me remind you." She kissed him. Not gentle, not tentative. She kissed him with 5 years of his locked-away grief and her own desperate need to believe that broken things could heal. Tae-Rin made a sound, half gasp, half surrender, and kissed her back with everything he'd buried. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, closer, like he could crawl inside her skin and hide from the world. It wasn't sweet. It was desperate, hungry, and terrified. It tasted like rain and regret and the dangerous hope that maybe they could survive this. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Tae-Rin pressed his forehead to hers. "The bet's over." "What?" "You won. I feel everything. Fear, hope, desire, terror. You made me human again." His voice cracked. "And now I don't know what to do with all of it." "You hold on." Liora gripped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. "You hold on, and you trust that feeling this much isn't weakness. It's the only proof we're alive." He kissed her again, softer this time, reverent. "What happens when the 30 days end? I don't know. Can I trust that this is real? Can I trust that you really want me and not a second chance with your past?" They stared at each other, both terrified, both falling, both too far gone to turn back now. Tae-Rin opened his mouth to answer when Minjun's voice cut through from the doorway. "Sir, we have a problem." Tae-Rin's arms tightened around Liora protectively. "What is it?" Minjun's expression was grim. "Ji-hee, she's resurfaced in Seoul. She wants to meet with you." The room went cold. Liora felt Tae-Rin's entire body tense against hers. "When?" His voice was empty again, all the warmth draining away. Tomorrow night, she says she has information that will change everything. Minjun's gaze flicked to Liora. She says it's about why she betrayed you, and she says she's ready to tell you the truth. Leora's heart plummeted. She watched Tae-Rin's face close off and watched him retreat behind his walls in real time. When he stepped back from her, the distance felt like miles. Tell her I'll meet her. Tae-Rin, Liora reached for him. Not now. He wouldn't look at her. Minjun, take Miss Chen home. I'm not leaving you. That's not a request. The coldness in his voice cut deeper than any knife. Liora stood frozen as he walked away, disappearing into his bedroom and closing the door with devastating finality. In the car, Minjun caught her eye in the mirror. He's scared. Of what? Her? Of feeling again and having it destroy him all over again. The car pulled into traffic. 5 years ago, he loved someone who looked him in the eye and lied. Now he's falling for you, and his past just knocked on the door. Can you blame him for wondering if history's repeating? Liora pressed her hand against the window, watching the city blur past. No, but I can blame him for pushing me away instead of letting me help. Give him time. But time was the one thing they didn't have. 5 more days until the bet ended. 5 more days to prove this was real. And now, a ghost from his past threatens to unravel everything they'd built. Liora touched her lips, still swollen from his kiss, and wondered if love was always this complicated, or if they were just particularly doomed. Tae-Rin met Ji-hee alone. Don't, Liora had begged that morning, catching him before he left the office. Let me come with you. This isn't your battle. His voice was empty, the warmth from last night's kiss completely gone. Stay here. She watched him leave, every instinct screaming that this was wrong. Something was shifting, breaking, and she was powerless to stop it. Minjun found her an hour later, pacing the office like a caged animal. He's at Seoul restaurant, private room on the 3rd floor. You're telling me this. Why? Because you deserve to know what you're up against. His expression was unreadable. But Miss Chen, sometimes the truth we overhear is worse than not knowing at all. Liora grabbed her coat. She stood outside Seoul restaurant as evening rain began to fall, staring up at the lit windows. Through one, she could see them, Tae-Rin and a woman with elegant posture and familiar eyes. Even from a distance, Liora could see the woman was beautiful. Polished in ways Liora would never be, sophisticated in ways that made her feel like a child playing dress-up. And the way Ji-hee leaned forward, her hand reaching across the table to touch Tae-Rin's, Liora's heart shattered. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands, calling Minjun. What's happening in there? Silence. Then, she's telling him she was forced, that the Kang family had her brother, threatened to kill him unless she cooperated. She says she disappeared to keep Tae-Rin alive, that coming back would have put him in danger. And he believes her? I don't know. His face is. Minjun paused. Unreadable. Liora watched Ji-hee's hand still resting on Tae-Rin's. I watched him not pull away. What else is she saying? That she still loves him, that she never stopped, that she wants forgiveness and a second chance. The rain fell harder. Liora's vision blurred. Rain or tears, she couldn't tell. I have to go. She ran. Not home, not to safety, but aimlessly through Seoul's rain-soaked streets until her lungs burned and her legs gave out. She collapsed on a bench in an empty park, soaked to the bone, and let herself break. How stupid she'd been, thinking she could make him feel again, thinking she was special, thinking a man haunted by his past could ever really choose his future. When Tae-Rin finally came to find her, hours later after Minjun tracked her phone, she was still sitting there, numb with cold and heartbreak. Liora. He stood before her, umbrella in hand, face carefully blank. We need to talk. About what? About how your ex-fiancée is back and suddenly you can't look at me? About how maybe you never stopped loving her? She stood, swaying slightly. About how I was just a placeholder until she decided to come back. That's not. Then what is it, Tae-Rin? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like the moment your past showed up, you forgot I existed. His jaw clenched. She told me things, explained things. It's complicated. Love isn't complicated. It's simple. You either choose someone or you don't. Liora's voice broke. And you're choosing to shut me out. Maybe you can't feel anything because your heart still belongs to someone else. You don't understand. Then help me understand. She grabbed his coat, desperate. Tell me what she said. Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me something instead of disappearing behind your walls again. For a moment, his mask cracked. She saw the confusion, the pain, the terrible pull between past and present. Then his expression went cold, the ghost chairman returning with devastating finality. Maybe this bet was a mistake. The words hit like a physical blow. What? Maybe I'm not capable of this, of feeling without it, destroying everything. His voice was distant, mechanical. You should leave before the 30 days end, before either of us gets hurt worse. I'm already hurt. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with rain. Don't you see? I'm already in love with you, you idiot, and you're throwing it away because you're too scared to choose me over your ghost. Tae-Rin flinched like she'd struck him. For a heartbeat, she thought he might reach for her. Then he stepped back. Minjun will take you home. Pack your things. I'll have your final payment ready tomorrow. He walked away, just walked away, leaving her standing in the rain with her heart in pieces. Day 29, and Liora didn't go to work. She packed her few belongings in her tiny apartment, hands shaking, tears falling on clothes she'd worn to walk Seoul's streets with him. Every item held a memory. The jacket she'd worn when he first held her hand, the dress from the night he'd almost kissed her in the rain. Her phone buzzed. Haewon. Come to the cafe, please. But Liora couldn't move. She sat on her bed, staring at nothing, wondering how she'd let herself believe a man who'd built walls for 5 years could tear them down in 30 days. In his penthouse office, Tae-Rin sat at his desk, staring at Liora's empty chair. The silence was unbearable. Not peaceful like it used to be, excruciating. He could hear every tick of the clock, every breath he took, every heartbeat that reminded him he was alive and feeling everything, and it hurt. God, it hurts. You're an idiot. Minjun stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Get out. She made you human again, and you're throwing it away because you're scared. I said get out. Ji-hee is your past, a past that broke you. Liora is your future, if you're brave enough to choose her. Minjun's voice softened. But you have to actually choose, sir. You have to be brave enough to trust that not everyone who looks at you with love is planning to destroy you. The door closed. Tae-Rin dropped his head into his hands. Liora's phone buzzed again. Unknown number. It wasn't a coincidence. Ask him about the job posting. Ask him who really arranged for you to apply. Her blood ran cold. She stared at the message, then at the job posting she'd saved, the one that had seemed too perfect, too specifically tailored to her skills. No, that was paranoia. That was doubt seeping into cracks that Ji-hee's return had opened. But what if it wasn't? What if everything, the job, the bet, the feelings, had been manipulated from the start? Outside her window, Seoul glittered with indifferent beauty. Day 29. One more day until the bet ended. One more day until she'd have her answer. If there was still anything left to answer for. Day 30. The morning arrived gray and heavy with unsaid things. Tae-Rin hadn't slept. He'd spent the night at his desk, staring at spreadsheets that blurred into meaninglessness, trying to convince himself he'd made the right choice, that pushing Liora away was protecting her, that feeling nothing was safer than feeling everything. The lie tasted bitter. At dawn, he went to make coffee and found the envelope on the kitchen counter, his name in her handwriting, careful, precise, achingly familiar. His hands shook as he opened it. Tae-Rin, you didn't lose the bet. I did. I came here thinking I could make you feel again without feeling anything myself. I thought I could stay detached, professional, safe. But you taught me something I'd forgotten, that being alive means risking pain. That the only thing worse than a broken heart is a heart that never opens at all. I fell in love with you. Not the ghost chairman everyone fears, but you. The man who remembers his fallen men's names, who walks Seoul streets at midnight searching for something he lost, who holds my hand like he's afraid I'll disappear. Thank you for letting me try. Thank you for teaching me it's okay to feel again, even when it hurts this much. I hope you find whatever you're looking for. I hope it makes you happy, Liora. The letter slipped from his fingers. Tae-Rin pressed both hands against the counter, breathing hard, feeling like his chest was caving in. She was gone. She thought she'd failed when she'd done the impossible. She'd made him human again. And he'd thrown it away because he was too scared to trust it. You're an idiot, he said in his reflection in the dark window. His reflection didn't disagree. He pulled out his phone, dialing the head of his security team. The anonymous threats to Miss Chen. I want to know who sent them. Now. It took 3 hours and calling in favors from people who owed him their lives. When the truth came back, Tae-rin felt something crack open in his chest. Rage, pure and clarifying. The messages had been sent from an IP address linked to a property owned by the Kang family. And the metadata on the final message, the one suggesting Liora's hiring was manipulation, traced back to a phone registered to Ji-hee. Her brother's story? Tae-rin asked Minjun coldly. Minjun pulled up records on his tablet. She's been working with the Kangs again for the past 6 months. This was another play, destabilize you emotionally, make you question everything, leave you vulnerable. And the job posting for Liora's position? Legitimate, posted by HR, processed through normal channels. Miss Chen found it through a standard job search site. Minjun met his eyes. Her arrival in your life was fate, not manipulation. Ji-hee tried to use her as a weapon, but she failed. Tae-rin stood abruptly. Where is Liora now? I don't. Find her. Now. While Minjun made calls, Tae-rin paced his office like a caged animal. He'd been so stupid, so scared. Ji-hee had appeared and all his old fears had come roaring back. What if he trusted again and got burned? What if feeling again meant losing again? But pushing Liora away hadn't protected him. It had just proven he was still letting his past dictate his future. Sir, Minjun looked up. She's at a friend's cafe in Hongdae. But Tae-rin was already moving. At the cafe, Haewon gripped Liora's hands across the table. You can't just give up. He told me to leave. Liora's voice was hollow. He chose his past over his future. What else is there to say? That he's scared. That men like him don't learn to feel again in 30 days and then handle it perfectly. Haewon's eyes blazed. Liora, I've known you for months. I've watched you drag yourself through grief and build a life from nothing. You don't quit when things get hard. This isn't hard. It's impossible. Love is always impossible until it isn't. Haewon squeezed her hands. He looked at you like you were the sun. Men like Yoon Tae-Rin don't fake that. They don't know how. Liora closed her eyes, remembering his hands in her hair, his voice breaking when he said he felt everything, the desperate way he'd kissed her like she was oxygen and he was drowning. What if I go back and he rejects me again? What if you don't go back and spend your life wondering? The words hit like lightning. Liora stood abruptly. I have to go. That's my girl. She ran. Out of the cafe, into the street, hailing a taxi with shaking hands. The driver barely pulled away from the curb before rain started falling. Of course it was raining. Seoul in spring was nothing but rain and second chances. Faster, she urged. Please. Tae-rin stood outside his building, searching the crowd with desperate eyes. Where was she? Minjun had said the cafe, but when he'd arrived, she'd already left. And then he saw her. Running toward him through the rain, hair plastered to her face, clothes soaked, the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. They collided in the middle of the sidewalk, both breathing hard, both drenched, both terrified. Liora, I need to tell you. They spoke simultaneously, stopped simultaneously. Rain poured down, people rushed past, umbrellas bobbing like flowers in a storm, and Tae-rin took her face in his hands, feeling his heart hammer against his ribs. I lost the bet, he said. Liora blinked rain from her eyes. What? I lost it the moment you walked into my life and made me want to feel again. His voice cracked. I lost it when you organized my chaos and called me on my bullshit. I lost it when you looked at me like I was human instead of a monster. I lost it every single day for 30 days, and I was too scared to admit it. Tae-rin. Ji-hee lied. About everything. Her brother, her reasons, all of it. She's working with my enemies again, trying to use you to destabilize me. But the job posting was real. You finding me was real. He pressed his forehead to hers. And what I feel for you is real. So real it terrifies me. Tears mixed with rain on Leora's cheeks. I thought you chose her. I choose you. I choose feeling over numbness, risk over safety, love over fear. His hands trembled. I love you, Liora Chen. I don't know how to do this, and I'll probably fail at it 100 times. She kissed him. Hard, fierce, desperate, a kiss that tasted like rain and salt and the sharp edge of relief. Tae-rin made a sound against her mouth, pulling her closer, kissing her back like she was the only solid thing in a spinning world. When they broke apart, both gasping, Liora touched his face with shaking fingers. Then we'll fail together. We'll figure it out together. We'll be terrified together. Together, he repeated, like a vow. I love you too, she whispered, even though you're an idiot who pushed me away. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know. She kissed him again, softer. But you came after me. That's what matters. Around them, Seoul moved on, people hurrying through rain, cars splashing through puddles, the city indifferent to their small miracle. But Tae-Rin held Liora like she was the axis his world turned on and felt his heart beat steadily in his chest. Alive. Feeling. Humans. Take me home, Liora said against his lips. Home. Tae-Rin agreed and led her inside. They made it to the elevator before Ji-hee appeared. Tae-Rin, her voice cut through the lobby like a blade. We need to talk. He turned slowly, keeping Liora's hand firmly in his. Ji-hee stood by the entrance, elegant even in the rain, her expression a careful mask of hurt and determination. There's nothing to discuss, Tae-Rin said coldly. I think there is. Ji-hee's gaze flicked to Liora with barely concealed contempt. Privately. No. His grip tightened. Anything you have to say, you can say in front of her. Ji-hee's mask cracked slightly. Fine. You want to do this here? Let's do it here. She stepped closer, voice dropping to something almost pleading. I explained everything yesterday. What I sacrificed, what I endured to keep you alive. You owe me, Tae-Rin. You owe me at least a chance. I owe you nothing. I saved your life. You destroyed it. His voice echoed through the marble lobby, drawing stares. You betrayed me, got 3 good men killed, and disappeared for 5 years. And now you show up with lies about brothers and sacrifices working with the same people who wanted me dead? Ji-hee's eyes widened. How did you? I know everything. Tae-Rin's voice turned to ice. The IP addresses, the anonymous threats, the attempt to drive a wedge between me and Liora by making her doubt how we met. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? She's making you weak. Ji-hee's composure shattered. Look at you, the ghost chairman, reduced to holding hands and playing house. I'm trying to save you from yourself. No. Liora stepped forward, done with silence. You're trying to control him because you can't stand that he's finally free of you. Ji-hee's laugh was sharp. And what are you? Some naive girl who thinks she can fix him? You don't know what he's capable of, what darkness lives inside him. I know exactly what lives inside him. Liora met her gaze steadily. Grief, guilt, fear, and underneath all of that, the capacity to love so deeply it scares him. You didn't see that because you never loved him. You loved what he could give you. You know nothing about us. I know he doesn't owe you his future because you ruined his past. Liora's voice remained calm, strong. And I don't fear you, because I've already survived losing everything once. You think threatening me will make me run? I buried my parents and raised my brother and rebuilt my life from ashes. You're just another obstacle. The elevator dinged. Minjun stepped out, tablet in hand, and 3 security personnel behind him. Here is your text exactly as you sent it, unchanged. Miss Park Ji-hee, Minjun said formally. I have documentation of your communications with the Kang family over the past 6 months, including payment records for information about Chairman Yoon's movements and business dealings. I also have evidence that you orchestrated the anonymous threats to Miss Chen and falsified information about your supposed imprisonment. Ji-hee's face went white. You can't. I can and I have. Minjun's expression was granite. You have 2 choices, leave Seoul quietly, or I will send this evidence to the authorities and let them handle it. Tae-Rin, Ji-hee turned desperate eyes to him. Please, after everything we had, what we had died 5 years ago. Tae-Rin's voice was final. You made your choices. I'm making mine. I'm choosing a life without shadows. Without you. With her? Ji-hee's laugh turned brittle. She'll leave you the moment she realizes what you really are. Maybe. Liora interlaced her fingers with Tae-Rin's. But I'll also stay through every failure, every fear, every moment he forgets how to be human. That's what love is, choosing someone even when it's hard. Ji-hee looked between them, seeing the united front, the certainty. Her mask finally crumbled completely. You'll regret this. The only thing I regret, Tae-Rin said quietly, is that I let your betrayal define me for 5 years. Not anymore. Security escorted Ji-hee out. She left with her head high, but her power broken, just another ghost Seoul would forget. In the elevator, Tae-Rin pulled Liora into his arms, breathing her in. Thank you. For what? For standing with me. For not running. For being brave when I couldn't be. She pulled back to look at him. What happens now? Now. He touched her face gently. Now I call a meeting with my board and announce major restructuring. I'm going legitimate, cleaning up the shadow operations, stepping into the light. It won't be easy, and I'll lose to people who only value power. But, but I'll keep the ones who matter. Minjun already said he's staying, and I'll build something new, something I can be proud of. His eyes held hers. Something worthy of you. I never asked you to change. I know. That's why I want to. The elevator opened onto his penthouse. Tae-Rin led her inside, through rooms that felt different now, less like a fortress, more like a home. In his bedroom, their bedroom now, he realized, they stood facing each other as rain drummed against the windows. Seoul glittered below, beautiful and indifferent to their small revolution. I need you to know, Tae-Rin said, hands trembling as he reached for her. I choose you. Every day, I choose you. Even when I'm scared. Even when I fail. Even when the past comes knocking. Leora's hands found the buttons of his shirt. I know. I've never done this before. Not really. Not with my whole heart. Neither have I. She smiled through tears. So we'll figure it out together. He kissed her slowly this time, reverently, memorizing the taste of her mouth and the soft sound she made against his lips. Clothes fell away with whispered confessions. I love you. I choose you. I'm yours. They learned each other in the lamplight, slow and careful and achingly tender. When he moved over her, into her, Tae-Rin felt something in his chest crack open completely, not breaking, but blooming, like a flower that had been buried too long finally reaching for the sun. Stay, he whispered against her neck. Always, she promised. They moved together in the darkness, two broken people becoming whole through the simple act of choosing each other. And when they finally fell asleep, tangled together, the city lights painting patterns on their skin, Tae-Rin felt peace for the first time in 5 years. Morning came soft and golden. Liora woke first, studying his sleeping face. No longer the ghost chairman, just Tae-Rin. Her Tae-Rin. He stirred, eyes opening to find her watching. Hi. Hi yourself. So what now? He asked, echoing her question from last night. Liora smiled, pressing a kiss to his jaw. Now we live. 3 months later, Seoul had never looked more beautiful. Liora stood on the balcony of the penthouse, their penthouse now, watching the sun paint the city in shades of amber and rose. Behind her, she could hear Tae-Rin on a conference call, his voice warm and animated in ways that still made her heart skip. He laughed at something someone said, the sound genuine and unguarded, and she smiled. The transformation had been remarkable. Yoon Holdings was now completely legitimate. No more shadow operations, no more whispered deals in dark corners. The restructuring had been brutal. Half his organization had left, unable to adapt to the light. But the ones who stayed were building something extraordinary, something clean, something they could be proud of. And Tae-Rin smiled now. Real smiles that reached his eyes and transformed his entire face. He was still powerful, still commanding, still the man who could silence a boardroom with a look. But he was no longer empty. No longer a ghost. He was human, beautifully, messily human. Sorry about that, Tae-Rin said, stepping onto the balcony and wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. Investors, they're excited about the new direction. Liora leaned back against him. They should be. You're building an empire the right way this time. We're building it. He kissed her temple. You're my partner now, remember? Equal stake, equal voice. She smiled. No longer his assistant, but his partner in every sense. In business, in life, in love. Together, they'd brought her brother Ethan to Seoul. Tae-Rin had not only funded his education, but mentored him, teaching him about business with the patience of someone who'd learned to value the things that mattered. Ethan called earlier, she said. He wants to know if you're coming to his presentation next week. Wouldn't miss it. Tae-Rin turned her to face him, his eyes soft in the fading light. Liora, there's something I need to ask you. Her heart stuttered at the nervousness in his voice. She loved this version of him, the one who still got nervous around her, who still looked at her like she held his world in her hands. 30 days ago, well, 120 days ago now, you made a bet that you could make me feel. His hands trembled slightly as he held hers. You won. God, you won in ways I never imagined. But I need to know. He took a breath. Will you make a different bet with me? Leora's eyes widened as he lowered himself to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. The city glittered behind him like a constellation of earthbound stars, and her vision blurred with tears. Bet that we can build a life together, he said, voice thick with emotion. Bet that love is worth the risk. Bet that we can keep choosing each other every single day, even when it's hard, even when we fail, even when the world tries to pull us apart. He opened the box, revealing a ring that caught the sunset and threw rainbows across his face. Liora Chen, marry me. The tears spilled over. Yes, she breathed. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Tae-Rin's hands shook as he slid the ring onto her finger. When he stood, she threw her arms around him, laughing and crying simultaneously. He lifted her off her feet, life spinning her once before, setting her down and kissing her with everything he'd learned about love in these past months. Gentle and fierce, grateful and desperate, certain and terrified all at once. You made me a bet once, Liora whispered against his lips, that I couldn't make you feel. Now I'm making you a promise. I'll spend my life making sure you never stop. He kissed her again as the sun set over Seoul, painting them in gold. Inside, through the window, Minjun watched with a rare smile before quietly slipping away to give them privacy. They say the Korean Mafia boss lost his heart that night 3 months ago. But the truth? He finally found it. Found it in the hands of a woman who'd been brave enough to bet on a ghost, patient enough to wait for him to become human, and strong enough to stand beside him as he learned to live again. And sometimes, losing is the only way to win everything that matters. Sometimes, the best bets are the ones where both people win. Sometimes love is just choosing someone every single day and trusting they'll choose you back. As darkness fell and stars emerged above Seoul's light pollution, Tae-Rin and Liora stood on their balcony, holding each other, planning a future that once seemed impossible. Two broken people who'd found each other in the darkness and decided to walk toward the light together. And that, in the end, was the greatest victory of all. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to remember that it's never too late to feel again, that broken hearts can heal, that ghosts can become human, that love, real, messy, terrifying love, is always worth the risk. Always.